We will now have Mike Lister is going to moderate the panel for our historians of Blytheville. Anybody remember last year when we did this for the first time? It was so moving hearing the elders talk about how Ash Street was so vibrant, and I thought to myself, what happened? And can we bring it back? And so I was just really impressed by the things they told us. So I'm looking forward to what they have this year.
Well, we're going to have a panel discussion. It's some historic conversation this afternoon, and I am honored to be a part of it. We have with us Dr. Ann Abraham, Ms. Sue Jeffers, Ms. Maxine Strickland, Ms. Joyce Hunter, Dr. Herman Strickland, and our Grand Marshal, Mr. Sanders. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Okay, where I want to start is, I'd like for someone, start with my 6th grade teacher, Ms. Sue Jeffers. I want to start with talking about what it was like for you to attend Harrison High School.
I was sharing with Ms. Perdue about Harrison High School, and this was our campus, and we didn't have lawnmowers. So what we did, we cut the grass with our feet. We would come out and play out here, and we would stomp on the grass, and it was a wonderful experience. I had the privilege of playing basketball for the Harrison High Dragons, and I thought I was a star. I really did. But it was a wonderful experience. I had a lot of friends that I still have now. I have a lot of wonderful memories of Harrison High School, and it was good for me.
I'd like to know from someone who went to Harrison High School, because many of you have been in education since then, and what was it like to be at an all-black school versus what you've seen in some of the integrated schools now, Dr. Strickland?
Thank you. That's a good question. I started Harrison High School when it was 1 through 12th grade. There was a little red frame building over there, one of the Rosenwald schools. Teachers nurtured us. When we came to school, the teachers were our people. My mother went to the 3rd grade, my father went to the 6th grade. And I heard Ms. Frederick talk about Ms. Shivers. She was my 1st grade teacher in 1945. She was also Sunday school teacher at Pilgrim Rec. She was also director of the Easter program at Pilgrim Rec. So our teachers didn't only teach school, they taught us about Christ. The community was, the school was the pillar of the community. Most of the entertainment that went on in Blytheville went on right here at this spot. It was either at a basketball game or at the senior prom. But not only did the high school students get an opportunity to attend the prom, but the community members could also dress up to come to the prom. So the high school was a school. The school system was the center of life here in Blytheville. And the teachers treated us like we were their children.
We never questioned the teachers. Whatever the teachers said, that was the law. And if my mother found out that I misbehaved at school, that was the law at home. So we didn't talk back. We didn't refuse anything that they told us to do. And as far as my mother and father were concerned, they were right. Whether they were wrong, but they were right.
Actually, we had 3 sets of parents. We had your parents at home, we had your parents at church, and we had your parents at school. And you obeyed them, and that was the law. And if you misused that law when you got home, they already knew what you had done. And we didn't have telephones and all that stuff, and I would be amazed that my mama already knew I had done something I didn't have, and didn't. And she'd be waiting on me, and I would pay for it.
Before we get into finding out whether or not you think that is some of the problems now that you don't have to pay the price for things that they do at school or out in the neighborhood, I wanted to talk a little bit about Dr. Strickland mentioned the term, Mr. Sanders, Rosenwald schools, and I want someone to really expound on Rosenwald schools, and we'll start with you.
First, I can talk to you about Harrison School. I know about Rosenwald because we played against Rosenwald, so for me to give you some history, a little detail of what Rosenwald was like. I can only compare Rosenwald to Harrison because the fact that we played against three people and they enjoyed it.
Well, and I get that, and I know that the Rosenwald School was in Osceola. However, the Rosenwald School is not only a school in Osceola, but it's a term for a school, Dr. Abraham.
Several years ago, there was an article in the paper asking for pictures of Rosenwald School. And I asked my father, what was the Rosenwald School? And he said, every black school we got is the Rosenwald School. I think his name was Julius Rosenwald. He was the president and CEO of Sears and Roebuck. And he gave maybe $20 million back in the 1920s to establish black schools, to improve health care among blacks. And because of that, many people named their schools Rosenwald. But it was after Julius Rosenwald, and he was the CEO of Sears.
And for those of you who are unfamiliar, Sears used to be a rival of today's Walmart, and it was called Sears and Roebuck. There even used to be a Sears and Roebuck catalog that got distributed to everyone, and after it was done being a catalog, sometimes it got to be used as but I say
I want to let you know how I felt with me going to Harrison School. I was a majorette at Harrison School. And Mr. Cecil Brown was our teacher, instructor. And every day, not one day, every day was practice after school. And we not only had to march all around out here, we had to go up and down Henderson Street, Shiver Street, all the streets over here, almost every day, march. And for every song that he played in the band, we had a routine that we had to do along with that. We had white boots on with tassels, and we had batons, and we had to throw our batons up in the air, spin around, do a split, and come back up. It would almost look like we were doing the James Brown. But all of that was during my time there. And my favorite teacher, I got to tell you about it. My favorite teacher going to Harrison School was Miss Willie Mae Robson. Miss Willie Mae Robson tried her best to teach me to be on time. I had her at 7:45 every morning. And I was getting up at 5 o'clock. And would you believe I still couldn't make it to school at 7:45, and I just lived right 2 streets from the school. And when I would get to school, she'd be standing in the door. George, say it again. And I would be running. I'd be out of breath when I get to school. She said, say it again, just get your chair and sit in the hall. I spent most of my time sitting in the hall. And then she said, I tell you what. She said, I'm gonna let you go today. Come on in. You ain't but 2 minutes late today, and I think you're doing a little bit better. So come, you can come on in today. But that was just some fun time. But believe it or not, I still run late. I don't know why. I still run late.
Well, sometimes it seems like running late is in our DNA. Sandra King has joined us, and we've been talking about time that you spent here at Harrison High School, what it was like for you. You can start with your favorite teacher or whatever story you'd like to give us.
I started in 1960 in the 7th grade. But before that, I went to school across the street at Elm Street School for 1st through 4th grade. And that school burned down in May of 1958. So that's when Franklin School was here. And I spent the 5th and 6th grade at Franklin. But then in 7th grade, I came to Harrison, and everybody was big. Everybody was tall. The rooms were bigger. The ceilings were higher. Everything about Harrison was big. My favorite teacher, like Joyce, was Miss Willie Mae Robinson. I love history today because of Miss Willie Mae Robinson. And my next favorite teacher was Miss Georgia Smith, who came after Miss Willie Mae deserted us and went to work for EOC one year. So we still had a good history teacher. And my favorite class was band. Band, like Joyce said, was the last class of the day. And it was fun. And then we got to travel. We went to football games all over Arkansas. And then we went to band festivals. There was always a band festival at Philander Smith College in Little Rock, and at UAPB. It was AM&N College in Pine Bluff then. So that was a fun time, being in band. I was in the student council, I was in the library club, I was in the honor society, but band was the best thing about going to Harrison School.
It's fun being here on the Richard B. Harrison campus, and we're celebrating this Juneteenth event here. When I sit here and look at the campus, I remember that there was a building on this campus that's not here anymore. Can anybody talk about the barn?
Man, most of us was almost born in the barn. And we lived there. Before the barn, we played basketball up on 2nd Street at the Army Hall. And that wasn't no fun, that was basketball. But then when they did move the barn from out on the campus, Air Base to here, and we got to be a better team. We played better, we worked harder, because old man ran us all the time. We had to practice more because we had our place of our own to practice. But the bond, we even scores in the bond. If we went someplace and they beat us, we were ready when we got back to the bond. The bond is our place, and we enjoy it.
Mr. Sanders mentioned old man. Anybody want to talk about old man?
Old man, Mr. Young, Coach Irie T. Young. He had a nickname that we were forbidden to use. His friends, you still can't use it. Okay. He can say it. What was it?
Speedy.
We could not call him that name. That was his basketball name for Philander Smith. But Mr. Young was everything to the young boys, because there were very few young adults like we had in Blytheville now, because as soon as a person finished high school, he had to get out of Blytheville because he couldn't make a decent living. He could make the same thing that I could make at 10 years old chopping cotton, so they had to leave. So we didn't have many young men. We always looked at our fathers as being real old. They weren't that old. But Mr. Young was the young man that we all looked up to. And he set some pretty good examples for us during my team. But it's because of Mr. Young and Robert Carthy that I was able to get a basketball scholarship and get a college degree. So I always look favorably on Mr. Young. And my mother at school was the one they talked about, Miss Willie Mae Robinson. She was my homeroom teacher. And if I brought in any grades, my mother didn't know anything about grade point average, honor society, or my Bible. But if I brought in a grade less than an A, Miss Willie Mae Robinson would be on my case.
Okay, I wanted to, I had a whole bunch of questions, and I left them in the car because I'm getting up in age, so I'm forgetful. But I know that many of you have different stories that some of them that we touched on, and some that you'd like to touch on, and who's next? Who has something that they'd like to share?
Let me go back to favorite teachers. I think my favorite subjects were math and history, so those were great teachers for me. But probably the teachers that had the most influence on my life, I'm going to go back to 2nd grade, who was Arizona Morris.
who helped me to center my focus. Because I was all over the place until I got in her room. And I have to give her credit for that. She was riddling for me. Okay. My next teacher I want to mention is Jean Kent. Once again, it seems like my favorite teachers were the strictest teachers that I had, and I probably needed that. Because I went into science, I had an excellent biology teacher. Her name is Bernice Brown. And, you know, I want to definitely mention all of them. And but I loved being in Harrison. You know, different people have different memories. It was a place, definitely a growth for me, a nurturing for me, and I still like school.
I met someone today who said she was Georgia Seals' niece. Georgia Seals was my first grade teacher. Georgia Seals' daughter is sitting right over there. I taught Georgia Seals' grandson and granddaughter, so it came full circle for me. But my first grade teacher, Georgia Seals, is the only reason I went to school, because I could read, and we have TV at home, and I just didn't see any reason to go to school. But I had to go because I was an obedient child, so I went. And Georgia took me under her wing. And the next year, I went to Arizona, Haley, Martinsburg. So those two teachers were my favorite. Then when I got to the 6th grade, Mr. Wiley was the 6th grade teacher. He was also the principal, so he was in and out a lot. And believe it or not, we didn't misbehave. We knew that we'd be in trouble if he came back and found out. So that's just something I want to say about my favorite teacher.
Well, you know what, I'm piggybacking off of that. I'm not a part of the panel. I'm supposed to be moderating, but I was thinking about when I was in 1st grade. I went to Robinson School in 1st grade, and my principal became Dr. Strickland by the time I was in 2nd grade, but in 1st grade, it was Mr. Wiley. And we had a lot of kids that were kind of all over the place too. But I could hear that somebody say, "Here comes Mr. Wiley." I knew exactly where my seat was. And I could find it in a hurry because Mr. Wiley had a couple of straps that he carried with him too. And he would use them. So I knew where my seat was. Anybody else had Mr. Wiley as a principal?
I had him as a principal and 6th grade teacher. And we didn't fear his strap, we feared his hand. Because he could grab you somewhere here, and he could move you anywhere he wanted you to be, which is probably in your seat.
Yes, Jeff?
Well, I probably needed ribbon too. So Mr. Wiley had a hand. And my mother taught me, and my brother doesn't like for me to use this word, but my mother said you can be learned. And Mr. Wiley could learn you. He was very good, he was very kind, but he meant business.
And you mentioned Mr. Young. When we had our assemblies, we would have 600 kids, maybe 600 children in a room, teenagers. And Mr. Young would just stand up and look around, and a hush would just fall all over the auditorium.
Now, I want to say this. Can you imagine all of the black children that lived in BLYTHEVILLE, Arkansas was housed right over there, 7 through 12. And Amarillo came up there, but they bust them in here. And we had this. Now, in the fall of the year, we had a seat anywhere we wanted to sit because people were in the field. They were picking cotton. But on rainy days, we had standing room only. But it was a good experience. It was a beautiful experience, and it helped me grow as a person and feel that we thing that Stephanie talked about this morning.
You know, it's just kind of funny to me that some of the things that I wanted to talk about just keep coming up without me even asking the question. But for example, many of you lived right here in Blytheville, close to Harrison High School, but there were people who came from Armorell, Barfield, Number 9, and all of these different places. What was it like for you you guys went here all along, and then suddenly there was a new class of people who had come in that lived basically out in the country, is what we called it. What was that like for you, Joyce?
It was a terrible experience. Terrible experience, I'll tell you why. Because when they closed Armorell's, well, back then, colored school, and we were housed, bused to Blytheville, it didn't seem like they accepted us at first. At first they didn't. But then as time went on, they did accept us. But they made us feel like we was invading, you know, we was country. And by them living in Blytheville, they felt like they was city, and we was country people and come to the city. But it all worked out in the end. It worked out in the end.
Is that the
Was it true that those of us who came from Barfield were country? Because I was born out of Barfield. We were country. What was it like, Dr. Strickland, then when these real country people came into the city to go to school here?
Well, they usually came when we were in ninth grade. When I came from Elm Street School and the kids came from Robinson School, there were about 115 of us in the 7th grade. By the time we got in the 9th grade, it might have been about 30 of those. So the other kids who came in to graduate with me were from the rural areas. Out in the country, my sister in that country, they were from the rural area. The rural area. But we embraced them because we wanted tall guys, and some of those guys were tall. We wanted strong guys, and some of those guys were strong. So they came in and supported our athletic team, and we kind of welcomed in. I don't think it didn't help. It really helped the baseball team, so we got to welcome in. I thought. I hope we didn't make them feel good to be one of them.
We were feeling at home though. We was from country too. most of us had moved from Armorell, Promised Land, Bernadette, Luxor, or someplace else too. We had been in Blytheville all our lives. So it wasn't nothing, they wasn't going through nothing that we hadn't experienced and understood. So, but I don't know that we gave them a hard time, that hard a time, because with the instructors we had, the good old teachers that we had in our lives, they took them in and you accepted them.
I'm dominating, but let me take you back. Can you imagine Boone Street? You know what Boone is? Can you imagine Ruddle Road? We didn't, because we just lived right up here in Compress Road. But we had students that had to walk every morning from Boone Street, from Ruddle. There were no buses for them to get on, but they walked every day to this little building over here for something that would make them better individuals. And it was hard. It wasn't an easy task. And I just want you to know that we haven't always had these buses to carry us all over town. We didn't have free lunch. We had a store down here called Ed Smith, where you could get cookies, 3 for a nickel, bologna, and so forth. And some of us had to eat that for lunch. And so it wasn't easy. So don't you think that because we're sitting here that we were on the ivory tower. It was hard. Okay, I'm free for a while.
You talking about people from the country. I married one of those people from the country.
All right.
And I had already known him, but he was one of those that was bused to Harrison in 1963. They came for 3 years. And also, kids came from Burdett, from Yarborough, and from Dale.
A great city.
And
Dale, right.
okay. Then all of a sudden, in 1965, the federal government decided that schools that were getting federal money should be integrated. So they integrated Dale School and Honor Rail School. So we lost a lot of our classmates. My class, I graduated in 1966, and we were designated to be the largest class Harrison had ever had. But all of a sudden, we lost 13 people went back to Honor Rail, and a smaller number than that went back to Dale. So we didn't have the largest class after all. But I don't think by the time these kids were coming, most of them didn't feel the way some of them felt. But they were talking about the buses. My father-in-law drove the bus from Honor Rail, and my husband said he stood on the first step, and somebody else stood on the second step. All the seats were filled, 3 people in each seat, and then people standing in the aisles. So every black kid from Honor Rail had to ride that one bus all the way to Harrison every day and catch it and ride it back. So a lot of them sacrificed a whole lot just coming in the ride, but they enjoyed it.
I was sitting here thinking about how important education was back in the days for our parents, because there were children coming in, and I can remember the Dale School truck especially. It was a pickup truck that had it was a pickup truck that had a petition that would roll down. It looked like a piece of cotton sack actually when the rain would come. But that truck would be full of kids. That's how important it was for education. What do you call it? Okay. All right.
I'd like for you, excuse me, to talk about integration, pros and cons, from the perspective of you as a student in segregated schools, and as well as a parent or an educator in integrated schools. And I'll start down on this end.
You know, it was said by Dr. Strickland, we were nurtured. We had courses that might surprise you. We had music theory courses. I was talking with Miss King, and her mother went to Jonesboro to the colored school. She even had Latin. We had French. We had band. We had just so many courses, physics, geometry, algebra 1, algebra 2. So we felt like, and I think we did, we got a great education. But we have to accept our facilities were not the same. We got the band uniforms from other schools after they had been used. We got books, geography books.
Might be a plug, that's what it is.
Pages torn out.
I just paid attention.
So
Hit the reset on the power surge.
were not the same.
The power surge.
The teachers, the quality of education, they did all the things. As I said before, the schools were integrated in 1965. Some of the students from Harrison left and went to Blythe High. Not all of them, just a few. We chose to stay. I was a senior and I wasn't ready to change schools that year. But later, we found out that we had great teachers. We learned a lot. When I went to college, I didn't have to take remedial math or remedial English. I was already up on those things. So that wasn't a big deal. After I started teaching, I taught in Blythe for 40 years in elementary school. And it was amazing that you can look around and see classes were all integrated by that time. And it seems like a million years ago when the facilities, like she said, were unequal. Even the black teachers got a lower salary than the white teachers. And into the band uniforms. We got Blythe High's uniforms way back in the 50s when Cecil Brown first started the band. And Harrison's colors were blue and gold,
And Driver High's colors were burgundy and white, so they wore those colors for a while. We got leftover books, leftover science equipment. When I was in 4th grade and the school burned, we went to Franklin. That was the first time I had ever seen a new textbook, because we always got the old used textbooks from Promised Land and Fearless. And the kids' names would be in them, and we'd always see names like Nancy and Billy and Susie, and we were wondering, who are those people? But those were the books we got. Nevertheless, we learned how to read, we learned how to do math, we learned science, and we are, I guess, in a way, we're still learning right now. We're still trying to teach. At least I do.
Oh, okay. I remember those books. I never went to the integrated school. I graduated right over there, and I'm proud of it to the day I die. I had some of the best black teachers that could ever be put in any child's life. All I can tell you about segregation is my experience as being in a segregated school where I taught. The difference that I can really just put my finger on is over here, I told you those were my parents. They were concerned with how I came out. They were concerned if I made a seed, which I didn't dare do. They were concerned about me, and from what I heard and experienced, that was not always the case in those.
Still talking about the difference of the school.
Right. Segregation versus integration.
Well, a significant thing happened to me because I was one of the first teachers to move over to the predominantly white schools. And I had taught at Franklin School. And I taught a self-contained classroom. For you who don't know what that is, from the 1st grade to the 6th grade, I had all my students for every course. And I had them all day. They became my children, really. In fact, they didn't call me Mr. Strickland, they called me Sir. And they called my wife the Madam. But they were our children. They were our children. We had parties for them. There were no room mothers. My wife would make some Kool-Aid, and we'd buy some cookies too for a penny, and we'd have parties for them in their room. But when we integrated the school, it became kind of complicated as to who would teach the white kids. So they departmentalized the grades. And I went from a teacher teaching all subjects, which I like social studies better too, to teaching math and science. So it was different. Elementary school kind of changed to something like a junior high. I taught all the kids in the 6th grade, but I taught them math and science. I preferred the self-contained classroom. I think it was better for the children. I think we bonded better with them when they came over to the high school in the 7th grade. For the first month, they would come back by Franklin School and tell me how they were doing in school. So we gave up some things, we gained some things. Yes, we gained some new books, but we lost a lot of other things in the transition.
You want to answer that question?
When you think about when I went to Harrison, I was gone to Harrison, and we wore red uniform because that's what Blythe High School had on the side of it. Books came from Blythe High School, basketball uniform came from the high school, and all of these things, when immigration came about, the kids got it. They didn't have to worry about uniform. A lot of Strickland and I worked a lot of time on pads and shoes and things that we could wear on the field. And we have to be thankful to God that we didn't get hurt real bad with the equipment that we wore. But we had good teachers, caring teachers that cared about you and worried about you and checked on you daily to make sure that you were all right. We went to Dr. Wilson. The teacher that first had Harrison turned us to Dr. Wilson, who was a good doctor and who cared about us and our well-being. So all those things we enjoyed, and we were blessed to have teachers like Mr. Shoes and Miss White few other that wouldn't intimidate Robinson, who was concerned about your well-being, not only just your class work, but all of your work, and all of the candidates you did and part of.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. I love this reminiscing. I think we can go on with this indefinitely. However, we have some other things that we have to do with this Juneteenth program. So I got one final question, and I just want one person to answer this. Any one of you can take it. I'd like to know what you would like to see in public education now. What is something that you would like to see manifest itself in public education right now?
Lava school district.
Who wants to take that? Here's Sandra King.
Fuss about it all the time. Our kids do not know history. They know very little. I've heard of some children who didn't know that President Obama was the first black president. They thought it was Abraham Lincoln. Really, I would love to see real history being taught, not as a unit, not as a group thing, but real, honest to goodness history from the beginning. Not just American history, not just black history, world history.
Thank you. I think someone has to write that history first, though. Real history.
I would like to see. I ran into so many kids now can only print their name. They cannot do courtesy. And I would like to see courtesy writing put back in the school.
Listen, I want to thank you all for sharing with us your memories and the history of the way it was around here. It was enlightening, wasn't it? It was great. Thank you all for sharing with us. I don't know where the MC is now.
More Haverstraw, Chattanooga, Chester, Nebraska, Alaska, Opelika, Baraboo, Waterloo, Kalamazoo, Kansas City, Sioux City, Cedar City, Dodge City. What a pity. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Across the deserts, bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere. I've been everywhere.